Welcome to Cake Playground, where it's all about the fun. This lesson is on how to cover a cake in fondant. We're going to be learning how to do the pink portion of the cake in this lesson. We will be using baby pink satinized fondant and the mat. We're going to be using about 2 pounds of fondant for this 6-inch cake. So cut off a piece, wrap up the rest tightly to keep it from drying out, and put it back in the container. Cut the fondant into pieces that are easy to work with in your hands. For each piece, put a little bit of shortening on your hand. Pull, stretch, and twist the fondant until it looks like taffy. Combine the pieces together, pull, stretch, twist, and flatten so it looks like this. We're going to be using the mat to roll out the fondant. It's 2 sheets of clear vinyl. So place the fondant between the 2 sheets of vinyl. So you're going to roll on top of the vinyl with a large rolling pin from the center out, and then turn 90 degrees and roll from the center out. After about 4 turns, I turn the sheet over and roll on the other side. This gives a really smooth look. After about 4 turns, turn the vinyl over. Use your rolling pin as a smoother, pushing away from yourself, and roll out until it's about 1/8 inch thick. Let's measure the fondant to see if it's big enough. We have a 6-inch in diameter cake that's 4 inches high. So I put the 6-inch pan in the middle of the fondant and measure 4 inches all the way around to see if we have enough fondant. Use your rolling pin to remove the vinyl by rolling the vinyl over the rolling pin and removing the vinyl from the fondant. If you were covering a real cake, you would cover the top and sides with a very thin coat of frosting. In this case, we're using a styrofoam cake dummy, so coat the top and sides with a very thin layer of piping gel using a paintbrush. After coating the cake with either frosting or piping gel, you're going to take the fondant, it's still on the vinyl mat, and put it on top of the cake. When it's adjusted so that all sides will have the proper amount of fondant, roll back the vinyl sheet to remove it. Use the excess fondant kind of like a skirt and fluff out the edges, and then smooth the top and the outer edge with the sides of your hand. You'll see here I got a tear in my fondant. So what we're going to do is try to repair it by pushing the fondant upward and then pinching so you get a smooth seam, and then use your fingers and hands to smooth it. Now you're going to gradually work down from the top of the cake, smoothing the cake with the sides of your hands and pulling the skirt away from the cake to avoid wrinkles and creases. You notice that I have the cake on a mat. This makes it a lot easier to turn the cake without having to lift it, so you can have a good position to smooth out the fondant. So take your time, have patience, and don't allow any wrinkles in the fondant. Once you get them in, they're hard to remove. Use a pizza cutter wheel to trim off the excess fondant. The first time around, don't trim too closely. We'll trim up a little bit closer later. Now we're going to move the cake to a turntable. So lift it up with a spatula, move it to the turntable so we can use the turntable to help smooth and polish the cake. Now here's our area where we repaired our tear. So I'm going to work a little bit of shortening in with my fingers. Gently rub it into the area where the tear was, and then smooth the shortening into the rest of the fondant in circular motion. This helps to make the tear area less noticeable. Now we're going to use a fondant smoother to smooth this area and the rest of the cake. So smooth gently against the top and the sides with the smoother. If you find your smoother sticking to the fondant, take a little bit of cornstarch to help it stop sticking. Continue smoothing the top and the edges with the fondant smoother. Use the flat edge of the fondant smoother against the bottom of the cake to make sure the fondant is stuck to the bottom edge. Use your wheel cutter to trim the fondant closer to the edge of the cake. However, I'm not trimming completely flush. There is a slight little margin. So take the cake off and hold it in your hand and smooth it around the bottom edge with your smoother. Any little edges adhere with your fingertips. And then place it on a board that's slightly larger so you can move the cake easily without having to touch it. Wrap up any excess fondant that doesn't have cake crumbs or frosting for later use. And here's some ideas you can use to decorate your cake. Please come back to cakeplayground.com and learn how to do ribbon roses and tassels, and some swags and bows. We also have other cake decorating lessons and product lists. Come back to Cake Playground. At Cake Playground, it's all about the fun.